Hello and welcome to another episode of In Conversation. My name is Bongani. This is the show where we engage with people of note in our great institution, the University of Johannesburg. And today I'm joined by Prof Admire Mare, who is the new HOD of Communication and Media Studies. Prof, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Bongani, for having me.
Yes, Prof. Well, firstly, congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you so much. I am really grateful that I've been given this task and responsibility by the institution, and I'm looking forward to it.
You have over 20 years of experience in communication and media. What drew you to this field particularly?
I think I've always been a storyteller, and I've always also was been raised by grandmothers, aunties who were storytellers. So pretty much getting into a space where storytelling was the big thing was for me, I think, something that was meant to happen. But over and above that, also, I think in many ways, my brother, who is the eldest brother in my family, I think, created a platform for me to get into this space, because I remember when I was still doing my A-levels, you would buy these expensive American magazines like your Fortune 500, your very, very powerful magazines that were coming from America. Times, you would also buy sometimes the New African magazine. All these magazines, I was reading them when I was still very young. So I was like, I want to write like these people. I want to be in this space like these people. So essentially, I think that actually created a platform for me then to get into this kind of space.
Yes. And I believe that also influenced your research interests. Can you tell us a little bit about your research interests?
Indeed. I think it did influence my research interest. But I think one thing that then shaped my research interest was to say that when I got into university, all of a sudden I was met with all these technologies. So the internet was coming into the fore. Social media was increasingly becoming a big thing. So all of a sudden I found myself in a space where I had to research about how media was actually shaping the way how we interact with it, but also how we interact and communicate and form communities, but also do politics. So essentially, that the first contact that I had with the internet, especially when I went to university, was the space where I said I wanted to understand this animal called the internet and how it's shaping our lives and how it's shaping how we live as human beings.
Yes. And fast track, as you said, you're starting it from when you were in varsity and now you're an HOD of a department. What are the changes that we are identifying with, of course, OpenAI? What is the relationship there with communication? What are the changes that we are actually witnessing because of internet?
Indeed, I think the internet has become a platform, but also an infrastructure upon which journalism actually is practiced. So in many ways, the internet has become almost the backbone of journalism. So you can't talk about journalism now without talking about the internet, but also social media. But now, as you're also talking about AI, for example, AI is also coming into the picture and is likely to shape how we also do communicate, but also how we interact with human beings, but also interact with systems and apps, and also these platforms that we are seeing coming to the fore. So certainly I think AI, as we see it right now, is also going to be a major factor in terms of how we produce, disseminate, but also process communication going into the future.
Yes. Interesting. And with that being said, of course, I'm also witnessing that communication is rapidly evolving, I must say. So with the students that we have in our department, which is Communication and Media Studies, how do we then prepare them to navigate and excel in this dynamic space?
I think you have rightly raised a very pertinent issue at this point in time, because I think we as communicators, but also journalism educators, communication educators, we are at a point in time in history where we really need to think through our curriculum to say what kind of a journalist, what kind of a communication expert, what kind of a filmmaker are we going to produce going into the future. And I think really we cannot continue to focus more on theory and then neglect the practical aspects that make and inform how people actually then communicate in practice. So I think what is going to happen going into the future is to make sure that we help our students appreciate how technologies that are coming into the picture can help them communicate and do storytelling in novel but interesting ways, so that at the end of the day, we can also be impactful in terms of what we are doing as a department, but also what we are doing as an institution in terms of serving the greater population in South Africa, but also beyond.
Coming to your role, which is the head of department, what are specific goals or initiatives do you plan to implement, whether to enhance academic and professional development of students in the program?
Awesome. So we have got a number of issues that we want to address going into the future, but one of the key issues obviously will be the curriculum review. We are going to review our curriculum in the context of 4IR, but we're also going to review our curriculum in the context of AI, which has also disrupted the way how we do assessments, but also how we train journalists, communicators, and also filmmakers. So that is going to be one of the key things. So what I can actually promise our students that are already in the system, but those that are also going to come into the future, is that they are going to come and witness and actually be able to interface with a totally revamped curriculum that speaks to 21st century graduate attributes in terms of collaboration, teamwork, but also just being able to use the technologies that are at the foremost center of what we are actually doing as communicators. But also one thing that I also want to emphasize is that we are also going to expose our students to cutting-edge research. So in terms of research supervision, they have to expect a lot in terms of that, because we are going to emphasize making sure that we do research that has got a 4IR element, but also looking at the social impact of that kind of research. So we are going to make sure that we mainstream some of the institutional strategic imperatives in terms of the social impact, but also 4IR, but also we're honing in on the issue of sustainable development goals. And then finally, we are also going to make sure that our students have got a very thoroughgoing interface with the industry. So we are going to forge strategic partnerships with industry so that our students can actually go for work integrated learning, but also they can people from industry can come and do guest lectures in our schools, so that we can then be able to build a student who can actually go and shine in the world out there.
Oh, now I'm clear that I'm part of that department. Yes. So, Prof, with that being said now, also, we know funding is a big issue. So how do you also intend to address maybe the issues of funding or form strategic partnerships with funding organizations?
Indeed. I think that is one of the key things that we are also trying to address, trying to bring in on board various corporates, government departments, but also bring funding organizations into the institution so that they can help us to address some of the issues that we are talking about. So, if, for example, if you want forward-looking kind of curriculum, certainly you need funding organizations to come on board and say, we are going to assist you, for example, with running a program on health communication, for example, or we are going to come on board and help you to do a digital journalism course, for example. So we will certainly be reaching out to various funding organizations, but also strategic partners that are within our borders, but also beyond, so that we can be able to do something for our students, but also even for our staff.
On staff, are there any concrete plans to position the department as the foremost center of excellence in the context of the fourth industrial revolution?
Indeed. And I think one of the key things that we want to do is to make sure that there is internal mentorship programs that we're going to put in place so that we mentor young and upcoming academics so that they can also be able to play a key role going into the future. But over and above that, we are also going to bring on board senior research associates that are coming from other institutions, either here in South Africa, but also abroad, that can also help us in terms of mentoring our staff in terms of grant making, looking for funding, but also doing excellent research, but also even making sure that they can do very impactful community service projects in our community. So we are certainly going to bring on board as many stakeholders as possible so that we can then be able to build something solid going into the future.
As we have more people on board, diversity and inclusion now becomes also of paramount importance. How do you plan on fostering a diverse and inclusive environment in our department?
I think that's a very important issue, especially now, because we really need to make sure that we have as many diverse and inclusive environment. I think we are going to make sure that we mainstream diversity and inclusion in our curriculum. So we need to make sure that we are not just teaching our students things that are coming from the global north. How do we make sure that we decolonize our curriculum so that we can speak to things that are actually happening in our own communities? So we need to make sure that African knowledge, African epistemologies are also given a center stage in our teaching. But over and above that, in terms of our recruitment, we are going to be very deliberate in terms of doing that. We need to make sure that people that are coming from marginalized communities, marginalized groups are also integrated into our institution. So we are going to make sure that in our recruitment drive, we make sure that we look at gender, ethnicity, and other variables that are very important so that we can actually have a very diverse but also very inclusive, because what I believe is that diversity makes us stronger rather than actually just working in our own little silos. So we are going to bring as many people on board as possible.
I'm still centered around technology, the rise of media and technology. So how do you see the department adapting to the changes that are brought to us by digital media and technology? And how will you ensure that students are equipped with the relevant skills for the industry?
Thanks again. I think certainly we are in the midst of a very robust revolution in terms of technology, but also some disruptions that have also been caused by the pandemic, which unfortunately or fortunately have actually accelerated the use of digital technology. So I think one of the key things that we are certainly going to be doing going into the future is to make sure that we continue in many instances using the hybrid learning approach so that we can actually be able to reach our students in whatever space where we find them. But also we need to make sure that we bring in new equipment that can actually help our students to do proper journalism, but also to do proper filmmaking programs. So we really need to make sure that we bring in the right kind of skills so that when somebody is done and dusted with the program, when they go into the world of work, they should not be surprised about meeting a totally new equipment that they've never met before they went into that world of work. So it's something that we are really thinking through and making sure that as we get into the future, we are going to work hand in glove with our corporate partners, but also funding organizations so that we can bring on board those kinds of equipment that can then help our students to come up with the right kind of skills that we certainly need. And I think one of the things that we certainly want to do is to have a standalone newsroom for journalism students, for example. Because right now we have got a studio, but I think we need a standalone, a fully equipped newsroom for our journalism students so that they can have access to the computers, but also editorial software. They should be able to do graphic designing of newsletters, newspapers before they get into the industry.
That's excellent. And with that being said, Prof, also research is of paramount importance to the institution. Do you plan to integrate research opportunities for both faculty and students in the department?
Indeed, and I think we are going to make sure that we continue what we have been doing. And I think right now we are so glad that the current VC has got a postdoctoral research drive. So he wants to recruit as many postdoctoral candidates to come to the university. We are going to tap into that well that he has created for us so that we can bring on board other researchers that can actually help us in terms of pushing our research outputs. But also we are going to make sure that we work hand in glove with our doctoral students, master students, but also honor students to produce cutting-edge research outputs so that at the end of the day, we can actually help the university to meet its strategic imperatives.
Coming from an African family, media, communication and media is not really ideal for most of our parents. What advice would you give to a person or students that are considering a degree in communication and media studies?
Thanks. I think that's a very fascinating question. I think certainly if you're coming from an African family, most of the time we are told that you have to be a doctor, you have to be a lawyer. And even in my own case, I remember my dad actually wanted me to be a lawyer. He actually even bought books in law, and that I still see even when I visit home, back home. But I think what I would say is that what is very important is to let your child discover his or her passion. Let somebody discover his, or if you have got a kid who is passionate about storytelling, somebody who wants to be behind the camera, who wants to be on the set, I think create a conducive environment for them to thrive, because there's no magic in terms of which career is going to blossom. Even somebody who is going to do journalism and communication can actually live a very comfortable life. So I think what I'm just trying to say is that let's cultivate a desire to know what our kids are good at. And if they are good at communicating, if they are good at talking, if they are good with camera, if they are good with equipment, let's expose them to that, and let's try as much as possible to nurture those kinds of passions so that they can actually reach their full potential.
Yes. And to stretch it a bit longer, Prof, what would you say is the importance of communication and media studies in society, especially in this modern day society?
I think without communication, there won't be society, because what separates human beings from animals and everything else is communication. So we certainly need as many communicators, because communicators are the glue that holds the society together. Be it in organizations, be it in the nations. Nations are built on communications. Right now we are dealing with a lot of misinformation, we are dealing with a lot of disinformation, and it's creating a lot of divisions in society. It's creating conflict, but it's also creating online polarization. All this is because communication in some way is going wrong. So we certainly need to produce as many communicators, many journalists that can actually inform our societies, so that at least we can actually contribute to a better society, but a society in which we all have got a stake in it.
Glad I made a good choice by understanding communication. So, Prof, under your leadership, what can people expect, the students particularly in the department, that are going to be under your leadership?
I think one thing that I just want to emphasize is to say that students are going to expect to meet a leader who is prepared to listen to their issues, but also who is going to be very consultative in terms of what needs to be done to take the department to the next level. So certainly that will be available in terms of creating that kind of a platform. But over and above that, we are going to be working hand in glove with students to make sure that we come up with a curriculum that speaks to the needs of the current society in which that we find ourselves. So as I have already pointed out, curriculum review is one of the key issues, making sure that we do impactful research, our community engagement, our strategic partnerships with industry. We are going to revisit all those things so that we can actually create platforms where students can actually thrive but also realize their full potential.
Amazing, amazing. Well, in closing remarks, I would like to give the opportunity for you to address probably our viewers.
Awesome, thanks. So in a nutshell, I think what I'm just going to say is to say, we as the Department of Communication and Media at UJ, we are ready to embrace but to work with forward-looking global citizens, corporate citizens, funding organizations that are prepared to take communication and media to the next level. We are ready and we've got a highly qualified staff members. Our students are so passionate. They are bringing their A game to our programs. So certainly we are going to work hand in glove with you to make sure that we create the right kind of platform for our students to thrive, but also to reach their full potential. To those that have already finished their programs, you are done, you are working, and you're asking yourself, but I need a qualification. Certainly, one thing that I want to emphasize to you is to say we are also going to be looking at short learning programs. So we are going to very shortly, we are going to be talking about executive media programs. So we have got programs that are meant for those that are working, those that are already doing things, so that at least we can give you the right kind of skills and certificates that you need to take your career to the next level. So make sure that you pay attention to the press. Look out for us. We are going to be advertising. We are going to reach out in various platforms, social media, through our website. We'll certainly make sure that we work with you to make sure that we come up with the programs that speaks to your needs in this particular point. Thank you so much.
Well, we've came to the end of this episode. That was my conversation with Prof Admire Mare. My name is Bongani. See you on the next episode.
The University of Johannesburg, the future reimagined.